Hi everyone, my name is Yusuf Salako, popularly known as Ori David, a 500 level law student of the University of Lagos, and you are welcome to my channel, the Ori David Consult channel. So today we shall be interrogating a very important topic in land law. This topic is very significant, fundamental, and goes to the root of any discourse on our customary land tenure system. Ladies and gentlemen, viewers, today we shall be discussing the topic customary tenancy. And in doing this, we have divided this lecture into four parts. The first part is to give an overview of what customary tenancy entails. The second part is to consider and interrogate the nature of the interests of the customary tenant vis-a-vis the overlord or the customary landowner. The third part, we interrogate and explore the terrain of the law on the order for feature. And the last part, we then traverse the trajectory and the arena of the law on the impact of the Land Use Act on customary tenancy. Without further ado, I shall then proceed to consider each of these divisions in seriatim. The first, which is what is customary tenancy? What does it mean? I must put it to you that whilst there is no generally acceptable definition of customary tenancy, the learned Sikh Professor I.O. Smith, SAN, in his book Practical Approach to Law of Real Property in Nigeria, posits that customary tenancy arises where a customary landowner grants to another person at customary law the right of occupation and use of the land in return for the grantee's recognition of the title of the grantor and payment of tribute. So what Professor I.O. Smith is basically saying is that in customary tenancy, it arises where the customary landowner grants to another person. But what the customary landowner grants to the other person is the use of the land and the right to occupy the land. And he does this in return that the grantee will recognize his own title, in the sense that he is not transferring his absolute or radical title, he's not transferring ownership to the customary tenant. And this also reinforces the dichotomy that exists between possession and ownership, which is a subject matter for another day. But you must understand that customary tenancy is different from other customary concepts like the borrowing of land or the gift of land. And you must also understand that customary tenancy cannot be found in the English system. And this is the reason why customary tenancy is quite different from a lease. And you would hear Elias C.J. Hen, as then was, in the case of Agenge versus Wagorego, where the eminent justice attempted to describe the legal nature of the interest of the customary tenant. And he said as follows, that in customary land law parlance, the customary tenants are not gifted the land. They are not borrowers or lessees. They are grantees of land under customary law, and they hold as such a determinable interest in the land, which may be enjoyed in perpetuity, subject to good behavior. Now, from this definition, it is very clear that customary tenancy is different from the gifts of land. Because in customary tenancy, like I said earlier on, what the customary landowner is transferring to the customary tenant is simply the right to use and occupy the land. in perpetuity, subject to good behavior, which means that the absolute title ownership has not been passed to the customary tenant. And that is why we say that the interest that is enjoyed by the customary tenant is a determinable interest, because it is always subject to good behavior. However, when you gift a land, the contrary is obtainable. When you gift a land, you are transferring your absolute and radical title. You are transferring ownership to the other person. And that is why the Supreme Court, in the case of Ogweje 4 versus Osaka, a 2000 case, explained that a gift inter vivos is an act whereby something is voluntarily transferred from the true possessor to another person with full intention that they shall not return to the donor, and with full intention on the part of the receiver to retain the thing entirely as his own. So you can see that gifting of land is different from customary tenancy. This is the same thing when it comes to borrowing of land. In borrowing of land, you realize that it appears to share a striking feature with customary tenancy, in that it's always have a set objective that must be that is to be achieved. In borrowing also, you are not transferring radical title, unlike when you give a land. But one thing you get to understand is that when they loan out loan in customary land tenure, it is only for a short period of time. So it is basically they give you the farmland, the land for you to farm, and probably after you have harvested, that's it, and you leave. But in customary tenancy, you find that right inures in perpetuity, which means it inures as far as the customary tenants are still of good behavior, or as far as that particular tenancy has not been determined. The determination of customary tenancy will also be thoroughly examined later on. So you can see how different it is. And it is also different from a lease. As you could hear the eminent justice Elias CJN in Wagenge and Agarago saying. And this is so because in customary law, certainty of duration is not a marked feature of customary tenancy, in the sense that the interest endures in perpetuity. You cannot say, for a particular period of time like this. But this is obtainable in a lease. There is always a certainty of duration. Okay, I give you a lease of 4 years. I give you a lease of 3 years. And also another thing you need to understand, that is a marked distinction between customary tenancy and a lease, is that in customary tenancy, what they normally pay is a tribute as against a rent that is obtainable in a lease. And you could hear the courts saying and making this distinction in the case of lascisi and annum versus to be and annum. At this juncture, it is pertinent and important that we enthuse upon some of the marked features of customary tenancy. One of these features is that the interest of a customary tenant in the land granted endures in perpetuity, and as such is practically indefeasible. This is especially after permanent biddings or other forms of improvement have been made on that land. And it explains the reason why even a mere misbehavior, as long as it doesn't try to undermine the overlord's reversionary interest, cannot extinguish the right of a customary tenant, and it is more aptly punished by a fine in modern times. And this is as explained by the court in the case of Lasisi versus Subi. And what we are saying is that the right of a customary tenant endures in perpetuity. That is, the right to use, to occupy, to possess that land. It endures, subsists as long as possible. And that is why it is inheritable. That is, you can inherit it. So when the family continues to inherit, and that is the reason why it is only subject to good behavior. Even a mere misbehavior is not enough to determine customary tenancy. So we'll get to understand what would amount to misbehavior or bad misbehavior, so to say. But you find out that customary, the landowner or the overlord cannot one day and just say, oh, you people, oh yeah, leave our land. After all, it's our land. Or to say, oh, you didn't greet me yesterday, or your son did not greet me yesterday. Remember that we gave you this land. Remember that this land is our own. Oh, you cannot do that because it endures in perpetuity. That is the reason why you find that generation upon generation and generation upon generation, we continue to enjoy that particular right until it has been determined. Are you following? So, and that is one marked feature of customary tenancy. And this is why you hear earlier CJN in Agenge Awagorogo saying that it can be akin to an emphyteusis, that is a perpetual right in the land of another person. Imagine you own the land and another person has a perpetual right to use and occupy the land as long as he wants, subject to good behavior. And so, another marked feature of customary tenancy is the payment of tribute. Like I explained, that the courts, in the case of Lasisi and Tubi, said that one of the marked distinctions between customary tenancy and a lease is that in a lease it is a rent, while in customary tenancy it is a tribute. But you must listen to the admonition of the court in the case of Abimbola versus Abaton, where the court said that although payment of tribute may point to the existence of customary tenancy, it is not a strict condition precedent, which means you can create customary tenancy even without the payment of tribute. So when you hear that, oh, tributes are being paid, then automatically it is an indicator. In most circumstances, you find that tributes are paid, but the court is cautioning that with that qualification that it is not a condition precedent. Another feature of customary tenancy is that a customary tenant has exclusive possession. And when we say it has exclusive possession, it means that what? He has the right to exclude every other person from entering the land. And this is including the overlord. Remember that in customary tenancy, what the overlord or the customary landowner has done is to transfer the rights to use and to possess the land. So while the customary tenant is still in possession of the land, he has the right to exclusive possession. The customary landowner cannot enter the land without the permission of the customary tenant. So, and you could also hear the courts saying in the case of Lasisi and Tubi that the customary landowner has exclusive possession. One marked feature of customary tenancy also is that the overlord cannot alienate without the consent of the customary tenant. The overlord cannot alienate without the consent of the customary tenant. And if he should do so, whoever it is that he has transferred his own right to will take the land subject to the interest of the customary tenant. What this means is that if he should sell, if the overlord should sell without the consent of the customary tenant, if you alienate or lease or pledge, the receiver, that is the third party, we only step into the shoes of the customary landowner. So which means, well, the customary will take the property, but it cannot eject the customary tenant. We have to take the property as that. And you could see this as reinforced in the case of Lasisi versus Tubi. You must also understand that this prohibition of alienation without the consent of the customary tenants is also applicable to the customary tenant, in the sense that the customary tenant cannot alienate, because in fact alienation is normally seen as a form of a gross iniquity that could amount to bad behavior, which could open or make the customary tenant susceptible to forfeiture. Now, you see the case of Fagbenro and Onishiwo. In Fagbenro and Onishiwo, the court held that the right of the customary tenants are limited to occupation and use of the land while they are still demonstrating and exhibiting good behavior, and that it does not include the right to alienate. How can you alienate? You're not the owner of the land. You have not been gifted the land. You cannot alienate because there is a superior title. And so you must kowtow to that title. You must seek the consent of the customary landowner. Same way the customary landowner must obtain consent from the customary tenant before alienation will take place. But you must understand that why we say that the right of a customary tenant inures in perpetuity doesn't mean that it cannot be determined. You can bring customary tenancy to an end. What inures, that's why we say it is still a determinable interest. So one of the ways that you can determine customary tenancy might be the accomplishment of the purpose of the tenancy. So if the purpose that is agreed upon from the beginning of the tenancy, if it has been achieved, then it constitutes, a determinable factor, so to say. Another way to determine customary tenancy is abandonment. Yes, where the customary tenant abandons the land, but it must be with no definite intention of returning back to the land. If he abandons, then it has been determined, and this is the reason why it has been held that if the customary tenant should leave the land to lie fallow for the purpose of recuperation of the soil, then it is not an abandonment that will determine the customary tenancy. Yes, because we find out that in the olden days, most of the time, the customary tenants, the reason why they get the land is simply most of the times to farm on the land. So when you continue farming, there are several ways that several methods of how do I put it, increasing the nutrients of the soil. So one of such is to just leave the land to lie fallow. So when they do so, the law is that it doesn't amount to abandonment. And then the next one is forfeiture. This is the most prominent way to actually determine customary tenancy. So forfeiture occurs where the customary tenant engages in acts that constitute misbehavior. But remember that even a mere misbehavior is not enough, especially where it does not challenge the reversionary title of the customary landowner. This is what we are going to say so far on forfeiture. Yes, it is skeletal and fragmentary, but this is because the third part of this lecture deals with forfeiture. And then we proceed to the second part. The second part has to do with the nature of the interest of the customary tenant and the customary landowner. And the relevance is this. If you are saying that a customary landowner cannot alienate without the consent of the customary tenants, and you're also saying that the customary tenants cannot do so without the consent of the customary landowner, and you're also saying that the customary landowner cannot enter the land without the consent of the customary tenant because the customary tenant has exclusive possession, and you are even saying that the customary landowner cannot determine customary tenancy at will. That is, cannot just wake up one day and say, oh, okay, I don't want again, we are not interested anymore. So it tells you that, and you also say that the right of the customary tenant inures in perpetuity. Families upon families, generation upon generation will come on the land that is owned by the customary landowner. Then it then appears as if the rights or the interest of the customary tenants far outweighs that of the customary landowner. So the question is, what is the nature of their interest? When placed on a scale, would it be balanced? They have equal interest, or does it mean that the customary tenant has a superior interest to that of the customary landowner? Supposing the government compulsorily acquires that land that is subject to customary tenancy, who is going to take a higher proportion of the compensation made by the governor? Is he the customary landowner or the customary tenancy? So we are going to be interrogating this, and when we are doing this, this is what we are going to be doing in our next video. And before I leave, I would like to recommend a textbook for you on land law. This textbook is the best textbook you can ever use on land law, and this is the textbook which is the practical approach to the law of real property in Nigeria, written by Professor I.O. Smith, SAN. Another book I would also like to recommend, especially when it involves the concept of possession and even customary tenancy, is the book written by Professor J.A. Omotola, which is Possession of Land. You can try to get this. It's very, very helpful. And that is that for today. In our next video, we shall be interrogating the nature of the interest of the customary tenant vis-a-vis the customary landowner. Ladies and gentlemen, I remain Yusuf Salako, Ori David, and I have just spoken. Do not forget to like this video, and do not forget to leave a comment. Engage us. Let us engage one another. And do not forget to subscribe. Click on the subscribe button and the bell so you get notified when we upload our next video on customary tenancy, interrogating the nature of the interest of the customary tenant and that of the landowner. See you next time. Stay jiggy.